jump off early, we'll be able to share that with you. We ask that during our panel discussion that you keep your audio and video turned off so we can focus on our speakers. And they have agreed to take questions at the end so we can turn our camera and audio back on then. I'd like to mention just a couple of upcoming events. We are wrapping up the virtual Carolinas meeting this morning. There are concurrent sessions at 10:30, and then the final session, Crane Watch, featuring 6 projects around the region, will be featured at 11:30. And please also mark your calendar for Monday, April 26th. We will be hosting the first ULI South Carolina golf tournament. That will be at the Charleston Municipal Golf Course. Registration will be coming this week, and we do have sponsorships available for that. And as always, I want to take a minute to thank our annual sponsors. We certainly couldn't do the work that we do throughout the state without their generous support. And now I would like to introduce our panel. They graciously serve on our inaugural ULI South Carolina Advisory Board, and we certainly appreciate them being here today and sharing their time and expertise. So I'll start with Melanie Brown. Melanie is the president and CEO of Restoration 52, an upstate South Carolina-based minority and women-owned real estate development firm rooted in health. Restoration 52 brings together non-traditional partnerships to develop affordable and workforce housing solutions that are intentionally designed to close costly health equity gaps. Melanie's life mission is to break the perils of cyclical poverty and grow health, wealth, and prosperity for generations to come. And we are fortunate to have Melanie serving as our chair for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we appreciate your leadership and passion, Melanie.
Thank you.
We also have with us today Lee Gill. Lee is the Chief Diversity Officer and Special Assistant to the President for Inclusion and Equity at Clemson University. Mr. Gill brings over 20 years of private and public sector experience working with major corporate executives, law firm executive committees, hospital administrators, and college presidents. Lee Gill's passionate belief is that no organization can afford not to harness the rainbow of demographic change for a competitive advantage. And carving time out of his very busy schedule, we have Marvin Pendarvis with us today. Marvin is an attorney, of course, with Pepper Law Firm, but his commitment to advocacy led him to run and win a seat in the South Carolina House of Representatives in 2017, where he has the opportunity to represent his hometown of North Charleston. His community involvement includes serving on the Garrett Academy of Technology School Improvement Council and the North Charleston Civil Coalition for Reform. Thank you all for being here today. And Melanie, I'll turn it over to you.
Excellent. Well, good morning, and thank you, Marvin and Lee, for agreeing to share your expertise and experiences with us. As we close out our Black History Month Coffee and Conversation series, I just could not think of a better pairing of ULI South Carolina Advisory Board members to share parting wisdom with our broader ULI colleagues. So I just want to thank you all for being here this morning. And out of respect for time, I'll just jump right into some of the questions that we have. We typically like to leave about 10 to 15 minutes at the end of our session open for anyone who's joining us today via virtual video chat to ask questions and answers. But the first 30 minutes will really be focused around you all being able to just share some parting wisdom with our ULI colleagues. So I am going to start actually with you, Lee. I have a question for you. So historical and contemporary government decisions and policies have harmed Black Americans by promoting place-based inequality. Black Americans have been marginalized to communities that lack access to high quality housing, food sources, and education. So Lee, in previous Coffee and Conversation series, panelists have discussed affordable housing and food deserts. But today I would like to explore the topic of educational attainment. Can you share with us how place-based inequality shows up in post-secondary schooling and some of the programs you have successfully implemented to close these gaps?
Great question. And let me first say, Melanie, thank you for the invitation and thank you all for joining us this morning. It is a pleasure and honor to be able to answer your questions. I hope I don't have too much orange on this morning, but it probably will help wake everybody up. So thank you for that first question. Let me just say I'd like to start my response to your question by looking at poverty, specifically along the lines of in South Carolina in the I-95 corridor. When you specifically ask about what type of programs are we implementing, we have one major program specifically targeted toward the I-95 corridor, and I think I don't need to explain some of the challenges within that area of poverty, socioeconomic challenges, et cetera, et cetera. Just giving one example, within that I-95 corridor, we have a program called Emerging Scholars. That program has been around for approximately about 17 years. 55% of our emerging scholars participants are living in homes where the highest level of education is a high school diploma or less. Only 23% of our emerging scholars live in homes with a parent with a bachelor's degree, and 20% of the families have a parent only with an associate's degree. Mm-hmm. It is one of the facts that if you are born into poverty, you have a chance, and it is around about a 63% chance that you're going to remain in poverty. So that the opportunity for educational attainment becomes extremely difficult. The majority of our students, like 98% of our students who are in our Emerging Scholars Program, are first generation students. Mm-hmm. That being said, once they have been engaged in the Emerging Scholars Program, we have 100% graduation rate of all of the students who actually complete the Emerging Scholars Program. So there is tremendous hope if we, Clemson University and the other universities throughout the state of South Carolina, really actively engage and outreach to these students to bring them into higher education. That is one of the programs that Clemson University has initiated in order to support the changing socioeconomics and the challenges of our student population within South Carolina. Other programs, we initiated approximately 5 years ago, what Clemson calls its National Men of Color Summit, hosted each year at the Greenville Convention Center. Why you say at the Greenville Convention Center? Because Clemson University does not have a space large enough to seat and feed 2,000 people. And each year that national summit draws up to 2,400 people from around the country. Last year in March, we actually had to turn away approximately 300 people because we just didn't have the seating space. What the Men of Color Summit focuses on is how do we prepare young men of color from the 9th grade until they graduate from high school to engage in ultimately going on to pursue higher education. Now, the goal is we would love for them to come to Clemson, but our real mission is how do we prepare students for a college going opportunity, be they go to USC or Furman or any other institution, Greenville Tech, Piedmont Technical College, wherever. We want our young students to go on to pursue higher education. If you're able, I love to talk about something called the talent dividend. Okay. Think about this. If you increase the graduation rates of, in this case, young African-American and Hispanic males, and those young males remain in the state of South Carolina, if they build their families and their homes, support their communities and their churches, synagogues, mosques, that talent dividend extends into supporting the entire economy of the state of South Carolina. It is the reward we get by building a pipeline for young folks who do not have a college going experience within their families, being first generation. I'm pleased to say that we are celebrating our 5th year this year of the Men of Color National Summit. So you're going to see a lot of information about that over the next few months. And I'm also pleased to say 100% of the young men who started in the 9th grade and now have graduated from high school, 100% have gone on to some form of higher education in South Carolina.
Wow.
That is a tremendous success for if one institution of higher education reaches out and supports these young folks. I'm also pleased to say that thanks to a generous sponsorship of General Electric, we are now going from not only being in the 9th grade, but we're moving into middle school. So we will be rolling out over the next few months where we actually begin to work with these young folks in the 7th grade. Because as you all know, the earlier you can touch their lives and put in front of them role models and experiences, that really impacts the ultimate success of those young men. I'm also pleased to say that because of the success of the Men of Color, we now have initiated the Women's Roundtable. Because Melanie, you know, we heard 5 years ago, well, what about the women? Well, we've initiated now the Women's Roundtable. All of these young women now that are in that particular cohort are first generation students. We've identified schools in the upstate where there have been some challenges of students graduating, particularly young women, and we now have focused in those particular areas. So when I look at the state of education within South Carolina, how we can impact these various groups of students that normally have been marginalized, I think the state of education and our opportunities are great.
That is excellent and truly shows the level of intention that it takes to have those sorts of results. So I thank you for sharing that with us. And it's actually an excellent segue into, hopefully we didn't lose Marvin there.
No, I'm here.
Okay, he's still there, Marvin. Okay, good. I want to go into perfect segue into, as we discuss policy-driven place-based inequality and its impact to educational inequality. We cannot leave out how all of this leads to economic inequality.
Yes.
Marvin, you are well-versed on the topic of place-based economic inequality. Can you speak to the driving forces behind place-based economic inequality, the impact of these forces, and how the gaps can be closed with opportunity zones and/or other approaches?
Absolutely. First off, can everyone hear me and see me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. I had to log into a separate Zoom account because it froze. But first off, thank you, Melanie. Thank you for everyone for putting this on. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be able to speak with everyone this morning as we conclude our celebration of Black History Month. I'll be honest, we can't begin the conversation about place-based inequality without looking at the role that our government played in segregating America. And many of you are probably familiar with Richard Rothstein's book, Color of Law. And if you are, you will understand how state, local, and federal governmental policies were complicit in ensuring that prosperity and poverty were concentrated in certain communities across the country through policies like redlining and exclusionary zoning. And so while the passage of the Fair Housing Act helped to right some of those wrongs, the ill effects of those policies are still being felt today in African-American communities who were never able to get on the level economic playing field. And it's resulted in that concentrated poverty through gentrification, the lack of affordable housing, educational inequality, as Dr. Gill stated before, food deserts, and the lack of jobs. That's because as the housing went, the jobs, the schools, the industry, and the opportunities soon followed. And so it left some of these areas so desolate and starving for opportunity. These issues can be addressed through a number of policies like opportunity zones, housing legislation, zoning reform, but chief among them is economic standing. And I believe we have to close the income gap because that's where the true equality, the true equity lies. And we have to get to a point where African Americans become active participants in the economy. And so so I wanted to take that historical dive because I wanted to talk about how we got here and be very frank about the roles that led to so much of the communities that left many of them lacking for more. And the inequality that we see in so many communities across the country, especially here in South Carolina. But the part of your question that talks about what we can look at and what policies could be put in place to address those. Well, opportunity zones are one of them. I think we have to be intentional, and I will be honest, as I've said to anyone before, in its current state, the opportunity zones legislation is flawed, and it does not get us to the point where we need to be as far as ensuring that we improve communities from the ground up. And so I believe that there's more to be desired, but if we look at how some states have been innovative in that approach and investing in these areas and making sure that we work on the infrastructure, we work on closing these food deserts, we work on ensuring that educational quality is ensured in some of these communities, and we work on addressing the housing issues, then we can tackle how some of these communities are inequitable in so many ways. I'm all about how we can promote thriving communities and how we can ensure their success for the long term. And so much of that comes with investment. And we have to, if we know that government policies are how we got here and that we're still reaping the ill effects of that, then it's going to be government policies, in my view, that get us to a point of a level economic playing field. So that especially African Americans are able to move forward in a way that they know that we have a significant say in what happens. And so much of that deals with the economic standing. We know what the numbers say about Black wealth, and we know what it says about Black home ownership. And I know that's that you'll get to that question later on. And we know what it says when it comes to the income gaps. That seems like it's continuing to widen in certain areas. And there's so many things that can be done, but so much of that goes back to policy. And our local, state, and federal governments play a critical role in rectifying that and getting us to a place where we can get the kind of investment in these communities that they need. Place-based inequality took years to get to this point, right? It was gradual in many areas, and so we see the manifestation of that and how it's harmed many communities over a long period of time. And so we have to be intentional about the policies that we put in place and ensuring that we move forward in a real equitable way. And so that's why I believe opportunity zones in a reformed way can be a tool, but also local policies, right? Tactics like zoning reform is important. We often overlook the impact that local governments can have, and obviously ULI has been good in that space, but being able to look at how zoning changes with inclusionary zoning and looking at how we look at some of these overlay districts in some of these areas and talking with county councils and city councils and the mayor's offices and figuring out what is it that we can do to target specific communities that have been historically neglected, that we know are in our backyard, that need the kind of investment in order for these communities to thrive. And absolutely. A lot of that begins and ends with policy.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one way how we got here from a policy perspective is because we lacked the reflection of the community we serve when the policies historically were being developed. And so one way to ensure a focus on equitable development practices for all communities is to ensure that our land use professionals are more reflective of the communities that we serve. Clemson University is the only accredited master's level architectural program in the state of South Carolina. Clemson is also home to the Master Real Estate Development Professional Degree Program. So Lee, can you share your thoughts on how these programs and others can contribute to the broader ecosystem that it's going to take to create a pipeline of diverse talent in the land use space?
Yes, thank you, Melanie. And first, I'd like to say I'm so pleased that Attorney Pendarvis kind of gave us a historical perspective of how we got here. Adding to that, when you look around South Carolina, I want to bring to the attention of everyone a gentleman by the name of Charles Hamilton Houston, who in the 40s toured South Carolina, taking pictures and chronicling the inequalities of the educational system and other opportunities that existed in South Carolina. For some of you who have not heard of Charles Hamilton Houston, please take an opportunity sometime today to Google him. He went on to become the founding dean of Howard University's law school, which says a lot about his not only intelligence, but his passion and commitment toward building educational opportunities through the law. He also happened to look up one day, and in his classroom walked a young man by the name of Thurgood Marshall. And I think the rest then becomes history, Attorney Pendarvis, because we know what that was able to accomplish in terms of the cases that brought about Brown v. Board of Education. That being said, what opportunities now exist through the development arm in real estate and land use? As you pointed out, Clemson has the only architectural program in the state of South Carolina as it relates to architecture and real estate development. We have to have individuals that are people of color. We have to have individuals that are coming from different gender backgrounds. We need more women. We need to engage a more broader diversity in this whole real estate development arena. Think about if you have more or had more individuals of color, what would gentrification look like? Wouldn't that be a difference than what we see now in certain communities where properties are being bought up, where people that are socioeconomically at the lower rung of the ladder being pushed out, where developers are coming in, building beautiful buildings and homes and office complexes and mixed dwellings, and yet the community as it used to exist no longer exists. People can no longer afford to live in these spaces, having the opportunity to maintain the stability of their families, of their neighborhood. So I think it is important that we begin early on to interest our people of color, interest our diversity of individuals in these type of programs. We need to do a better job, because think about that young boy or that young girl. How many of them are sitting in grade school or high school thinking, I want to be a real estate developer?
Right.
Probably very few, because we need to do a better job of bringing individuals like all of the individuals that are presently on the Zoom call and begin to mentor and educate and inform young people of the possibilities that exist of how they can build their own communities, how they can control the opportunities within their communities and maintain a stable, successful, achieving neighborhood place for everyone.
Lee, is there a way to connect, some of the programs you spoke to earlier around that pipeline development, is there a way to connect that pipeline all the way through, and a role that ULI could play with helping that connection point?
Absolutely, Melanie. And quite frankly, one of the reasons that I am so pleased to be a part of this inaugural advisory board is that I want all of you to think about the fact that you all can be mentors. And we're actually going to provide you an opportunity through invitations to our Tiger Alliance high school cohort those ninth graders, the women, the young women who are in different programs, our women's roundtable and our women's resource groups. We want to provide you that opportunity to come and mentor and talk and discuss what real estate development is all about. What opportunities are available for you as a young person who have walked and lived and experienced these neighborhoods, and how you can come back and help build these neighborhoods. So these pipeline opportunities are they exist. They have the availability of bringing in persons like yourself. And for folks who say, well, I don't know what to do. Well, I want to say that Clemson University wants to offer all of you, and you will be getting invitations to come and talk to our young folks. Come with us into our high schools. Come with us in our middle schools and begin to explain to them what your jobs are so they can see you as role models. We need to begin to educate at an earlier level on what opportunities exist. So that's a great question, Melanie.
Yeah, we are in for a real treat through the advisory board, because this discussion is going to really play out very well for the work ahead of us. So thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
It actually kicks into the next question, because we talk about ownership. So Marvin, I would love to hear, can you share your thoughts on how we can attract more people of color to being owners in the real estate sector, not only just homeowners, but owners from a real estate developer standpoint as well?
Yes.
Yeah, I really appreciate this question. It was one that I wrestled with quite a bit, Melanie. I'll be frank. And I wrote down something that Lee said. He says, how can they build their own community? That was a point that stuck with me. And I'll say this. We have to look at a lot of the barriers that exist that prevent people of color from being owners in the real estate sector to begin with. And if you talk with real estate professionals, I'm in consistent conversation with the Realtors Association up here, because I'm always asking about these issues, right? We know that there are barriers that exist for people of color. And so how do we break down those barriers, and how do we create a path forward to increase African-American home ownership for people of color across the country? And in those conversations with the realtors here, or if you were to just poll general people in the community, a lot of the barriers stem down to inability to make a down payment, low credit scores. Those are two things. One, they exist all over across the board, but they're particularly exacerbated in, you talk about African-American home ownership. And so I started to think, well, what is it about those issues, and how can we really address it? And a lot of it goes back to what I stated previously. In order for African Americans to get to a point where they're buyers in the real estate market and actually becoming homeowners and building those communities, as Dr. Gill said, we have to get to a point where, again, that word, an economic playing field, a level economic playing field. If you don't have the kind of access to job opportunities in your community, if you're not having that income to be able to make a down payment. And so there's so many conditions that exist in some of these pockets of concentrated poverty that prohibit and really delay home ownership for so many African Americans. When you're dealing with issues like food deserts, and you've already got an affordability problem with housing to begin with, where you're dealing with health disparities that exist in the community, and the fact that you don't have quality education. So much of your money is spent addressing those issues, right? We haven't even got to the point of buying a home because you're trying to take care of the necessities that exist as it currently is in your life. And so much of getting to the path of home ownership begins with trying to ensure that African Americans first are on a level playing field and have access to opportunity and are able to fully be able to be participants in this economy being able to earn income that will allow them to ultimately purchase homes. But that's not it. That's not to suggest that will entirely solve the problem, because we know that there are, especially in the realtor section, that there are violations of the fair housing rule. In that, if you look at the communities, many people are looked at how the realtors have not necessarily. There was a study done, or a big paper, or a TV station up in New York did this big project on the real estate market, and how you still saw blatant violations of fair housing policies that existed currently when it comes to steering people in various communities, and say, well, this isn't where you wouldn't be able to afford to live here. And so we have to, one, work on strengthening rules to ensure equity in the real estate profession, but also we have to look at ways to ensure that lending institutions that are like CDFIs that have generally been in African American communities have the ability to do that. We have to invest in them, because these are places where many African Americans are going to get loans, and to be able to take out the kind of loan that's necessary to deal with the mortgage. And so a lot of it, yes, we need to address the barriers, but also there are opportunities for us to look at investment in institutions that have generally been able to ensure that African Americans have access to the capital needed to be buyers in the real estate market.
Right. Absolutely.
So true.
Excellent comments. We are now at 9:02. So we have about 12 or 13 minutes or so for some additional questions. So for those of you that have joined us today, if you can turn on your video camera and feel free to ask these two very distinguished gentlemen any questions that you may have. So I open it up at this time.
Well, good morning, everyone.
Good morning,
Good
Ted.
morning.
Well, first of all, Melanie, I would like to thank you on doing a grandstand celebration for Black History. You knocked the ball out of the park on every occasion. So hats off to you, and hats off to this advisory committee. What you guys said today, I don't have enough time to really respond to what you all said, because you all said it all. Until the equity playing field is level, it's not going to happen. And I'm not going to take up much time, but I am consistently asking, is there any university or college interested in creating an affordable housing curriculum? I think it could be done. I think it can be done. Like you said, with all the professionals at the table here, we all should be able to come up with an affordable housing curriculum and share it with college students all over, not South Carolina, but all over the United States, and who knows, all over the world. It has to be a product. It has to be something that we can do. Second, someone mentioned land use and zoning reform. That's the ultimate goal right there. That has to be changed. It has to be challenged. And last but not least, Lee, you're not going to like this, but I have partnered with USC Beaufort. I live down here in Jasper County.
Yeah.
We partner with the local university in South Carolina, Beaufort, the Bluffton branch, where we have interns that started this semester, and they will be coming in every semester to see if this is a field that they're trying to go into. I am a nonprofit developer where I offer all the affordable housing projects. And so I'm sharing these with these students, like you said. If I go out to a job site with consultants, I take them, I explain to them what the process is all about, why we are here. And some of the consultants look at me and said, why are they here? Well, they are here because I want them to be here, first of all, and I want them to be a part of me and my organization, so they can say if this is somewhere they would like to go, so they can be prosperous too, and like you said, be owners. You know, they can become owners. Mine was blessed. I was blessed with property. So that what made me become a nonprofit developer. And so on that note, I just want to say last, it's all about the Benjamins. Okay.
I like it, Ted. I like it.
Yes. So let's see here. Great discussion. We have a question coming through. Lee, is the color of law required reading for Masters of Real Estate Development program?
No, it is not. That was a great question. And I just happen to know that. It is not, but it should be. And frankly, I had spoken to the dean to inform him that we were going to be doing this as part of Black History Month, this particular discussion. And I will recommend to him that that should be included in the curriculum. That's a great question. And so true that it needs to be, frankly, it should be necessary reading. I will have that conversation.
Any additional
It
questions?
really is. It really is. No, I just wanted to add what Lee said. You know, it's necessary, and that's why I opened with it in my remarks and answering the first question. It's just, you know, yes.
Yeah,
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah,
Definitely necessary reading. Any additional questions?
I actually have a little selfish question for my friends in North Charleston in this area, but Marvin, are you considering running for mayor of North Charleston?
Oh, wow. That's a very direct question.
wow, Robin.
Sorry if I'm out of line, but
I plan to run for re-election to the House in 2022. And, you know, I will evaluate other opportunities as they arise. But I have been considering it, and so we will see.
Excellent. Wonderful. Well, if there's no additional questions, I would like to take this time to thank Marvin or Lee. Do you all have any parting comments that you would like before I close this out?
Well, I just want to thank you.
Go ahead, Marvin. No, Marvin, go ahead.
I just wanted to thank you for doing this. This was a really good discussion. I really have enjoyed my time on the ULI board so far. And the main reason is just because we're willing to have honest and frank conversations about real issues. And I'm a big proponent in trying to address issues at its causal root. And, you know, in following the discussion that took place this month, it really unpacked some of these issues and kind of some of these issues that are multi-layered and really work towards having a fruitful conversation so that we can come up with some solutions. So thank you for just allowing me to be part of it. And it's always good to see my friend, Dr. Gill.
Same here, Marvin, on my part as well. I love the question that Robin asked at the last, and I loved your response. Melanie, I want to say to you and to the ULI Advisory Board and all the members joining us this morning, this is an exciting opportunity. I am so impressed and pleased that this ULI Advisory Board exists. And I want to say to all of you that over the next few months, we will be reaching out. And like Ted has already talked about, we need to speak to these young folks earlier. They need to see the opportunities that exist for them. And so be looking for some invitations from Clemson University to come and speak to our young students in middle school and in high school.
Excellent. Well, with that said, Dr. Gill, Marvin, I would like to thank you both for joining us this morning. I would like to thank you for your leadership on the ULI South Carolina Advisory Board. As all of our ULI members can see, we are in for a real treat as we continue to build out our plans within the ULI South Carolina Advisory Board. Over the last 4 weeks, you all have had an opportunity to really get to know individual members of the advisory board during this Black History Month, but also receive a lot of wealth of information as it relates to topics that primarily have marginalized a lot of our Black members in our communities throughout the state of South Carolina. So I just want to thank everyone who has participated in this series with us. I want to thank you for your comments and your questions, for everyone's expertise and leadership in certain areas. And so as we close out, stay tuned for more. Check your emails frequently, because you will be hearing a lot more from us and from us very soon, and how to be able to actively engage in the diversity, equity, and inclusion work of the Urban Land Institute there in South Carolina. And so
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you, Melanie, and thank you, Lee and Marvin and
you.
Melanie for spearheading this entire series this month. I think it's really been great, robust conversations, and we look forward to things ahead.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great
Have a
day.
good
Thanks,
morning.
everybody. Take
Take
care.
care.
Take care.